name is Peter Evans, and I'm the managing partner of Evans Disability. First, on behalf of myself and our clients, I want to say thank you so much for taking the opportunity to watch this video and also taking the time to fill out the third-party adult function report form. It's no small task, it's not a small favor, so we are very grateful. It's a form that needs to be completed. It's a form that Social Security requests to be completed, and even when I did it for the purposes of this instructional video, the form took me about 45 minutes to an hour to fill out. And so we know, and I recognize that that's time is valuable, and so we're very grateful. The second thing I want to talk to you about is sort of the instructions and things you should do before you sit down to fill out this form. So first and foremost, what I want to talk about is what you need. And what you need is this other form called the Adult Function Report. And here I want you to notice in the top left-hand corner, it says SSA-3373. And for this form, you'll see it's SSA-3380. So this form is a form that's sent directly to the person who is disabled, and they are asked to complete this and fill this out and mail it back in. You should have a completed copy of this form by the person who has requested you to fill out the third-party form. That way you can understand what their answers are to make sure that you guys both have the same perception of what's going on. So again, the form that you'll need in front of you before you start filling out the third-party form is the SSA Adult Function Report, or Function Report-Adult, SSA 3373. 99.9% of the questions on the Adult Function Report form that the disabled person fills out are the exact same questions on the third-party form. The reason that what they're looking for, what Social Security is looking for, is inconsistencies. Are your answers completely inconsistent with what the disabled party has filled out? So if you're the spouse or the significant other, this hopefully should be fairly easy, since you'll have the person right in front of you and you can just ask them for the form. If you're a friend or a family member who doesn't live with the disabled person, you should reach out to them and ask them to send you a copy of the Adult Function Report that they filled out. So let's go ahead and jump in on some instructions and kind of talk to you about the purpose of this third-party report form. So first, you'll see on page 1 of 10, it gives you a phone number to call Social Security if you need help. Do not call Social Security. They're not going to give you any help. Social Security is not looking out for the best interests of our clients in the way that we are. If you have questions, please give our office a call. We'd be more than happy to kind of talk to you about if you have any specific questions. We don't fill this form out for folks, but we definitely can help answer questions for you. You can give our office a call at 503-200-2718. Again, that's 503-200-2718. So do not call Social Security. The other instructions are pretty self-explanatory. Let me just kind of highlight a couple. It says print or type. And as you can imagine, if your handwriting is completely unreadable, you'd be much better off to type out the answers to the question. As you know, if you can't read an answer, most people just move on to something that they can hopefully read in the questionnaire. And if the vast majority of the questionnaire is unreadable, they just won't read it, and then it's not helpful. The other thing that I want you to know is don't leave any questions blank. And then it talks about here, if you need more space to answer any questions, you can use remarks section on page 10. And yes, you can use that. We also, if you run out of room there, we also encourage clients to go ahead and use another piece of paper and just kind of attach it to the form when you mail it back in. Once this form is completed, I would encourage you to photocopy it, scan it, and keep a copy for yourself, that just in case Social Security loses this form in the mail. That way you don't have to spend the time to fill it out again. You can just print it out and have it in front of you. So that's sort of the general report on this. The third thing I want to talk to you about is sort of Social Security and disability. In the most simplest of terms, one of the things we're trying to prove for our clients is that they are unable to work and sustain full-time employment. And so being disabled by Social Security's definition is directly related to your ability to work. And so what you'll notice with a lot of these questions, there are a lot of questions about what is the person's functional capacity now, their ability to grocery shop or their ability to sit, stand, walk, and lift. And what Social Security is trying to figure out is if this person can work at a full-time job. So that's what they're trying to figure out. That's why some of these questions are being asked the way they are. And then again, with the third-party form, it is literally 99% of the questions are the exact same that the client gets on their form, or the disabled person will get on their form to fill out. And so that's why you want to have both in front of you. So let's go ahead and dive in. Page 2 is just legal information about the Privacy Act and Paper Reduction Act statement. If you're curious, you can go ahead and read through that. And then here what you're going to do, and I actually made a mistake and I noticed this earlier, but on question 4, but let's talk about question 1. Name of the disabled person, first, middle, and last. Your name, and then the relationship to the person. And here I filled this out pretending that it was my wife who was filling this out on my behalf. And then I put in date of birth here because I didn't read it very carefully. I was flying through this as quickly as I can, but this is actually today's date. And so go ahead and you can make note. I'm a big believer in progress over perfection, and so I just wanted to kind of progress and get through this. The other thing here is that go ahead and write down your daytime telephone number where they can reach you. Social Security calling you maybe happens 1 out of 500 cases, and it's typically because there's a missing page, or if there's something completely missing, they might reach out to you. So how long have you known the disabled person? This comes down to credibility. If it's someone you barely know, then they're not going to take this form and the information out very seriously. I mean, they'll just say it's sort of, and we use the word credibility in legal terms, but not credible because you don't really know the person. If it's someone you see on a daily basis, that's far different than someone you see once or 2 times a year. Or someone if you only known for a few months. So how long have you known the disabled person? Here we wrote down 12 years. And how much time do you spend with the disabled person, and what do you do together? And so here, pretending to be my wife, I wrote, I see my husband daily. We spend 2 to 4 hours together while awake. We watch TV. We watch TV. We eat dinner. We go to sleep. And so those 2 to 4 hours is because, my wife works, and so Monday through Friday, generally we only get to kind of hang out 2 to 4 hours, kind of depending on her work schedule. But that's kind of the average. Over 12 years, those have changed. The average times have changed, but really, because you're trying to outline here what you've known about this person over the last, not just several months, but just for as long as you've known them. So you sort of have to kind of work with averages. Where does the disabled person live? And so now at question 7, you're going to see how similar the questions are to the adult function report. So here, which this is you're filling out the third party form. If you go over to the adult function report, and this again is the form that the client or the disabled person fills out, you can see on question 4, where do you live? Oh, checkmarked house. So I'm being consistent. Checkmarked house. With whom does he or she live? I check marked here. We're pretending this is my wife, and so she check marked with family, and then over here, with whom do you live? With family. So as you go through this, you're going to see many of the questions that are exactly the same. And so if for some reason, and you always want to tell the truth, but if for some reason your perception or your thought is different, or your answer would be drastically different than that of the disabled person, I would encourage you to call your friend, your family member, whoever asked, who asked you to fill this form out, and talk to them about it, and just be like, oh, hey, I thought you lived in a group home, but now I saw on your form you said a house. And so just have a quick conversation with with anything that you think that your perception is a little bit different than their perception. So back to the third party form, and I'm going to be bouncing back, here and there, and my hope is just to show you sort of what we did to be consistent, but not exactly the same. You don't want to kind of write down word for word what the person said in their adult function report, but you want to read it and sort of be inspired and hopefully be on the same page. So what we talk to our clients about in their instructional video on how to fill out the adult function report is to talk about, how this question number 8 here is sort of their story, their first time they sort of get to tell Social Security their core things about what's going on in their life. And so I would encourage you to look at what they've done, be consistent with it, but add anything else that you think might be missing or that could add to their story, not necessarily distract. So here, the person, and I pretended to fill this out. It says, I am a 46-year-old man. I have a GED for the last 15 years. I've worked as a receptionist, cashier, and a construction worker, and I've been diagnosed with degenerative disc disease, fibromyalgia, and diabetes. I've been out of work for over 1 year due to severe pain in my back, neck, legs, arms, hands, and feet. I also have severe neuropathy in my hands and feet. The burning, and here you can say I wrote continued, so we scroll down all the way down to here, and I put question 5. Burning was the last word I used. Burning sensations in my hands and feet. It's constant. The pain is constant. I take the pain pills my doctor's prescribed, and they do not help. They do not help relieve the pain more than 20%. And so one of the things I want to bring your attention to is I'm trying to be as specific as I can. I think if you just say that the pain doesn't help very much, it's not very specific. But in this particular scenario, I said, hey, the pain doesn't help more than 20%. The pain is so bad I have to lay down 1 time per day for a couple hours at a time, for 15 to 30 minutes at a time. I have 2 to 4 bad days per month where I'm in bed 95% of the day. So again, I'm trying to be as specific as I can using 2 to 4 bad days. And you can give ranges, and then saying 95% of the day. And it says here I have to alternate between sitting, standing, and laying down every 30 to 45 minutes. The pain and lifestyle have caused me to be depressed. I find myself in tears 1 to 2 times per week for 15 to 20 minutes at a time. So that's the end of question 5. Now back over here, you read that and sort of see how I've kind of kept it the same, but also kind of worded it differently. Here, again, my wife would write, my husband suffers from severe constant pain. And she didn't go into the diagnoses. And a lot of times as a third person, how would you know the diagnosis? You're really just kind of writing down what you observe. So in the adult function report, you notice like, hey, I have fibromyalgia, I have neuropathy, depression. But here we're sort of writing down like, no one expects you to be their doctor to know their diagnoses. So instead, but what you do notice is like, gosh, my friend or my husband or my wife, they're in severe constant pain. The pain that I observe, or the pain is in his back, neck, arms, hands, legs, and feet, because that's something you can observe, but you don't necessarily know it's because of fibromyalgia or degenerative disc disease. So instead, you're just sort of writing down what you see. He is in so much pain, he needs to lay down 1 time every 2 hours for 30 minutes at a time. So being specific, using numbers and time. For 30 minutes at a time. He has 2 to 4 days per month where he is in bed 95% of the day. So that was the same, and that's good because now you're being consistent. My husband's hand pain causes him to drop items. And so that's new, right? 1 to 10 times per day. The pain has also limited his ability to sit for more than 30 minutes, stand for no more than 15 to 30 minutes. And so here is a very specific outline of how this person's illnesses, injuries, or conditions limit his or her ability to work. As you know, if you have ever worked at a full-time job, most employers will not allow you to be in bed 2 to 4 days per month for 95% of the day, let alone if you're dropping items 1 to 10 times a day, or if you need to, change positions or even lay down. Most employers will not let you lay down on the job. So if Social Security looks at this and they say, hey, look, there's no way this person can sustain a full-time job. Sure, they might be able to get hired for a day or get hired on the spot, but their first day of work, as soon as they need to go lay down or they're going to be unproductive, as most of you know, that person would be let go. So let's go ahead and move on to question 9. Describe what the disabled person does from the time he or she wakes up until going to bed. So back to the adult function report. And let's scroll back up on this. Guess what? Exactly the same. Describe what you do from the time you wake up until you go to bed. So here, the disabled person wrote, I wake up at 8 a.m. I make simple meals. I take my medication and lay down for 30 minutes. I will wash my dishes for 10 minutes. Then I will sit and rest for 10 to 15 minutes. And I will then watch TV in my recliner for 1 hour. I will eat a microwave lunch. I will then let my dog out. And then it continues down, again, down to page 10, which question 6, after my dog, I will lay down for 30 minutes. I will then watch TV for 1 to 2 hours on the recliner and eat dinner. So going back to your question on the third-party questionnaire, and I want to get this ready for our next question. I shortened it up because whoever's making a decision, they're going to have the advantage of having both of these in front of them. And many, many folks who are asked to fill out this third-party questionnaire don't have the adult function report in front of them. And so, and again, that's why I strongly encourage you to have that adult function report so you understand what the person, their point of view is on what's going on. So here, describe what the disabled person does. I sort of reworded it. I said my husband wakes up around 8. He will make himself a simple breakfast. He will then lay down and rest for 30 to 45 minutes. He'll then wash his dishes for 10 minutes or so. He will then rest, watch TV in his recliner for about an hour. He will then make lunch and let the dog out. And so then continued, and as you can see here, there was space down here to continue it on, and I just kind of put the number of the question. His walking is limited to less than 1 block. His limited to lifting less than 10 pounds. My husband is 50% slower at tasks versus when he was able to work. So again, being specific, and you have to realize what they're trying to do is make this decision, can this person work? Can this person work and sustain full-time employment? And so, and what they're also doing, why do they care about the person's typical day? Describe what the disabled person does from the time he or she wakes up until going to bed. Why do they care? Because they want to make sure that the way the person lives their life is consistent with all the reasons they say they can't work. So if a person goes to Social Security and says, hey, look, I'm in a severe amount of pain and I can't work, but one of the things they may do on a typical day from the time they wake up until they go to bed is to go for a 2-mile or 3-mile run or even a mile run. The person making the decision would likely look at that and say, gosh, that's not consistent with someone who says they're in this much pain. Question 10, does the person take care of anyone else, such as a wife, husband, and children? Here we wrote no. And then as you can see on the adult function report, it's exactly the same. Do you take care of anyone else, such as a wife, husband, children, grandchildren, parent? No. If you have as the third party person filling out this form, basically a witness, if your answer is different, you may want to call your friend or family member and ask them, hey, I thought you were taking care of your wife. Now, always tell the truth, but sometimes it's not just about truth, it's also about perception and just investigating and understanding like what the situation is. Does he or she take care of pets or animals? And the reason they ask about, are you a caretaker or a caregiver of pets and animals? It always comes down to, yes, is the way you're living your life consistent with the reason you can't work? And so sometimes what Social Security will do is they will use the fact that you're a caregiver against you. Unfortunately, I know some judges who, when they see a mom who's taking care of a young child, and when I mean young, someone too young to be in school, they will look at that as a full-time caregiving job, and it's an extremely difficult job. And being a mom, a full-time stay-at-home mom with young children, can be extremely difficult. So if they are taking care of young children, obviously you need to say yes, but are they getting help? That's one approach we take it. How much help is the person getting with their kids? How much help is the person getting with whoever they're taking care of? And what do they actually do for them? I think there's a difference between a 6-month-old and a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old. A lot of 4-year-olds self-manage a little bit, but definitely far better than a 6-month-old. So here we did the example of, yes, taking care of pets. And then he will open the door and let the dog out. He will fill the water bucket from time to time. So it's a little vague on, time to time is a little bit more vague. If you happen to know the answer, like, he'll fill the water bucket 1 time per day, or, water bowl. I said once a day, you can write that. And if you don't know, you can just write, he will fill the water bowl, and I don't know how often. Does anyone help this person care for other people or animals? Yes. And here, as the significant other, my wife wrote down, I am the primary caregiver for our dog. I walk and feed the dog. So I think if you are a significant other and you're the one doing this, I think you should point out, I am the primary person. And then, question 13, what was a disabled person able to do before his or her injuries or illness or conditions that he or she can't do now? And I think giving a perception of or a perspective to the decision maker, look, here's who he used to be. He used to work. He used to work out. He used to hang out with friends. He used to go snowboarding. We used to go on long walks with each other. And then you can see on the adult function report, if you have that in front of you, and again, the questions are exactly the same. What were you able to do before your illness or injuries or conditions that you can't do now? And the disabled person wrote, I was able to snowboard, long walks, run, exercise, work full time. I can't do any of those things now due to pain. And so you don't want to be word for word exact, but you definitely want to be consistent and add on to what your friend or family member is saying here. And I think the way we answered this was also consistent. And so, does the illness, injuries, or conditions affect his or her sleep? We put yes. And again, they're looking about how consistent is this person's, the way they live their life, including the way they sleep. How consistent is that with how all the reasons they say they can't work? And in this scenario, we're saying pain. So here we wrote, the pain interrupts his sleep. He can only sleep for 3 to 4 hours at a time. Then he will wake up in pain. The pain will keep him up for 1 to 2 hours, and then he'll sleep for 1 to 2 hours and then back up due to pain. Now, if you're being asked about someone's sleep patterns and you don't live with that person or sleep next to him, I think it'd be more appropriate to say, I don't know. But if you are, and you do live with that person and you do happen to know their sleep patterns, just check in with each other and hear, do the illness and injuries or conditions affect your sleep? Yes, this is what the client said. So this is why it's so important to have the adult function report in front of you, because as you can see, the questions are exactly the same. And so here, the pain wakes me up in the night. I can only sleep 3 to 4 hours at a time, and then I'm up for about 1 hour. I'll go back to sleep for 1 to 2 hours, and then I'll wake up again due to pain. And so I believe the way the wife is answering this is very consistent and adds on to the way the husband in this case answered it. Personal care. And here they talk about dressing, bathing, caring for the hair, shaving, feeding, How does the client, or how does the disabled person do with feeding themselves, using the toilet? And again, all of these are trying to figure out is the way that this person, because when someone dresses, you got to think about it, and we don't always think about it. You've got to be able to tie your shoes. You have to be able to pull up your pants, which will require some bending. So if the person says, hey, look, I cannot bend, but yet they have no difficulties getting dressed, that's not necessarily consistent. Same with bathing. I mean, bathing, you either have to, get into the bathtub or stand in a shower, hold a soap, wash your hair. You got to be able to raise your arms above your head. So again, these are questions that they want to make sure, the way you take care of yourself, is that consistent with all the reasons you say you can't work. If you're saying, hey, look, I have neuropathy in my hands, which is, for those of you who don't know, but that's like a real serious, like sort of numbing and burning sensation in your hands. It tends to have people drop items, and if they're dropping items, I think that's important to note here. Like, hey, I'm bathing and I dropped the soap, or I have difficulty stepping up over the bath, and so as you can see again in the adult function report. Number 12, personal care, dress, bathe, care for hair, shave. So exactly the same. And go ahead and read that, and talk to your, friend or family member or significant other, and just be like, make sure you guys are on the same page. And so let's move on. As far as any reminders taking care of the person's needs and grooming, yes, I will remind my husband to bathe. And if you're a friend, yes, I have to remind him we were scheduled to have a phone call, or I was scheduled to come over for dinner, or I was scheduled to, give examples. And here, this person's in so much pain that they have to be reminded to bathe. And on the adult function report that the client filled out, do you need any special reminders? Yes. My wife will remind me to bathe. I usually can go 3 to 4 days without taking a bath, and she will remind me. And so that's what the client filled out, and then go back to the third-party form. And then does he or she need help or reminders taking medication? Yes. Here we got a pill box to make sure he takes his medication like his doctors want him to. And again, as you can see over here, exactly the same. Do you need any help or reminders taking medication? Yes. I use the pill box to make sure I take my medications as prescribed. Okay. So as you can see, every question is the same, and it goes without saying, be consistent. And so why do they ask about meals? Because meals require the ability to lift. Sometimes judges know that a gallon of milk weighs about 8.5 to 9 pounds. A full gallon of milk. They know that how long typically does it take a person to do dishes, and they want to know because we're trying to prove that the way you live your life is not consistent, or the way you live your life is consistent with all the reasons you say you can't work. So if you're in the kitchen prepping big Thanksgiving dinners every night, then that's going to stand out. So here, my husband will prepare simple meals only, like canned soup, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. How often does he do this? 1 to 2 times a day, usually just a lunch and a snack. How long does it take him or her? 30 minutes. So 30 minutes to prepare something simple. So why? Well, my husband is much slower. He usually only prepares something for 10 to 15 minutes. He will need to sit and rest for 10 to 20 minutes to an hour due to pain. And so a lot of times what we look at is, hey, look, you can stand on the counter for 5 minutes. You're really slow. You're in a lot of pain. You're making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Well, then maybe you need to sit for 5 minutes, and then you can get back to it for another 5 minutes. Most employers will not let you do that. They will not let you work for 5 minutes and have 5 minutes off, work for 5 minutes and have 5 minutes off. And so that's what we're trying to show. That's what we're trying to prove. Here I just did a 10 to 15 minute example. House and yard work. Yard work's a big no-no in Social Security cases because most judges and most decision makers within the Social Security Administration, I think when you say yard work, they imagine someone out there chopping wood or picking weeds or planting and bending and squatting. So if this is a physical disability, be very careful about how you describe your yard work. But again, laundry, This person says, yes, I can do some household chores, because just because you can do these things doesn't mean you're going to lose your case. In fact, Social Security law states that just because you can do these things, fold laundry, doesn't mean you're able to work full time. So, it's a fine balance we're trying to find here. We're not trying to go super extreme, but at the same time, you just want to kind of lay it out there, sort of just how it is. So I fold laundry, and here the third party is saying I've seen her fold laundry, do light dishes, or put dishes into the dishwasher, will wipe the table and countertops and then go grocery shopping. And then over here, you can see dishes, fold laundry, light dusting. So here the client used the word light dusting and then grocery shopping. And over here, instead of using the word light dusting, just said wipe the table. So kind of a little bit more specific, paints a little bit clearer picture. It's a different perspective as well. How much time do chores take, and how often does he or she do these things? Again, this question is also on the adult function report, and because they're trying to say, hey, look, gosh, he can do the chores, one chore per day. What used to take 30 minutes will now take 1 hour. He can usually only do 1 to 3 days per week. So one chore per day, up to 3 days per week, and no more. Does she or need help or encouragement doing these things? Yes, because, gosh, if you have to remind him to bathe, then probably need to remind him to do chores. And then here the wife says, I will complete the chores he does not do, which is at least half the chores. So how many chores does he not complete? And again, imagine you only getting half your work done, and it takes you much longer to do on the job. Your employer would fire you. And then go over here. You can look at the adult function report. Oh, I do chores 1 to 3 times a week for 15 minutes at a time, and I'm 50% slower now. And then here, my wife will finish up the chores I do not complete, which is typically half the time. If you don't do household chores at work, explain why not. NA, not applicable. We didn't leave it blank. You could put, because you just described why they do household chores. Okay, so let's keep going on. So getting around, how often does this person go outside? 1 to 2 times a week. I think on the adult function report, 1 to 2 times a week. You want to be consistent again. So here, what the client filled out: walk, drive a car, ride a car, and use public transportation. Here, exact same thing. If your perception is different, please go ahead and talk to the client and ask them, hey, I thought you rode a bike all the time. When going out, can he or she go out alone? Yes. Does the disabled person drive? Yes. Driving is asked in almost every hearing that we do, because there's a lot involved in driving. You have to be able to sit, push and pull on, or push pedals, the gas pedal and the brake. You need to be able to steer. Steering requires you to reach in front of you. And then they'll ask, how long can you drive before you need to stop the car and get out? And most clients, if they're going on 6-hour drives, that's not going to be consistent with someone who says, man, I need to lay down every 1 to 2 hours because you're sitting in a car driving. And so again, that's not consistent. So that's why they ask. But here, what about shopping? Well, in stores, we go to the grocery store, and then you can see they shop in stores and by computer. In stores, they're buying groceries, household items, and clothes. And then here we kind of break it down even more. How often does he or she shop, and how long does it take? And so he will shop on a computer 1 time per week for 10 minutes. Computer work requires the use of hands. And in this case, we, in particular, on our sample here, we talked about how difficulty the person has with their hands. And so if they're, on the computer for more than 10 minutes, someone might raise an eyebrow and be like, well, gosh, I thought you said you had a really hard time using your hands, but why are you on a computer for 6 hours a day or 3 hours a day? And folks like to, judges or decision makers like to look at that. And especially judges, they'll say, well, gosh, are you writing emails to friends? Are you on Facebook? Like, how much time are you on the computer? Because I think they assume that you're just using the keyboard the whole time. So here they talk about he will shop at the grocery store with me for 30 to 45 minutes. He will use a motorized cart. And so that, it's good to throw that in if there's especially accommodations, because these forms don't always ask about that. And so if there is an accommodation that you're seeing or observing that the client doing, like using a motorized cart or a cane or a walker or a wheelchair even at the grocery store, add that in. And again, this is an exact same question you'll see on the other form. Money, pay bills, count change. So yes, yes, yes. You have to explain no to all answers. So here, there's a part B to this, which is great. Has a disabled person's ability to handle money change since the illness or injuries. So here we wrote, he is able to pay bills, count change, handle savings account, and use a checkbook or money order. That he can do that, but it has changed, and here is how we explain it. His concentration is off. He bounces checks now, and he never used to. So he knows how to write a check. He knows how to, he's able to handle a savings account. He's just not very good at it. And so that's what we get to explain here in this B section. Okay, and now we go down to hobbies and interests. Watching TV. I think you got to kind of raise an eyebrow or think about what hobbies your friend or family member or the disabled person is doing. I think if one of the hobbies is running or jogging or working out, I think that's going to raise an eyebrow. Even hunting or fishing tends to raise an eyebrow, because then folks will ask, well, like, what are you hunting for? Do you have a disabled hunting permit? If you let's say are hunting a deer, how do you navigate the terrain with all the pain you're in, and how do you pack everything out? So it's going to just open the door to where the client needs to explain things. Always tell the truth when filling this form out, but just make sure that your truth is the truth, and that your guys' perceptions, that your perception is not just what you think is going on, but what is actually going on. Okay, how often and how well does he or she do these things? So here we just talked about watching TV three times a day for 30 to 60 minutes at a time. I'll ask him what he watches, and a lot of times he loses track. So meaning the client or the disabled person can't track a 30 to 60 minute TV show, and if you've ever asked someone, what'd you think, or I missed 15 minutes of it, tell me about the ending, and they can't do it, that would be really important to make note of in this third party form. Describe any of the, so let's go down to the social activities. And I'm kind of skipping through a few of these questions, but I'm hoping it, sort of 35 minutes into this, you're sort of getting it. And then you'll see the SSA adult function report. Again, a lot of the same questions. So, social activities, how does a disabled person spend time? In person, on the phone, texting. Describe the kind of things he or she does with others. Well, this is a spouse situation, so we'll watch TV together. He will usually call or text his friends. We will watch TV one time per day for 1 hour. He'll text someone 1 to 2 times per week. And here, list of places you go, grocery store. Again, you just want to be consistent with what they're saying here. And does he or she need to be reminded to go places? In this situation, we said no. How often does he or she go, and how much does he or she take part? Well, here we wrote 1 to 2 times per week. We go to the store. Once per week we go to the store. He'll use the electric cart. I carry the grocery bags in and out of the cart to the house. And again, grocery bags happen to be a popular question with Social Security. Who's carrying the grocery bags? Because if you're saying you're in all this pain and you can't even lift a gallon of milk, well, sometimes grocery bags, weigh more than that. So that's why they ask. Does he or she need someone to accompany him or her? Yes, at the grocery store. Not at all places, but at the grocery store. And then here they're going to get into some mental health issues. They talk about, does he have any problems getting along with family members or friends or neighbors? And if someone has an anger outburst, at an employer or a manager or even a coworker or a customer, then that person is not employable either. So he's angry and frustrated, he never used to be, but now he will yell and scream at me and our family. My husband, and the change is my husband used to be the life of the party, very outgoing. Now he isolates, doesn't see his friends. which is different than texting his friends. He doesn't see his friends very often. Kind of isolates in the house. Here, I want to talk about this. Now, what happened was I was in a hurry and I didn't get a chance to fill out. Please explain how your illness, injuries, or conditions affect each of the items you checked. For example, you can only lift now, check how many pounds, or you can only walk. If you come into something that's blank, please call the person, say, hey, you left this question blank. Your lawyer in a video said you needed to fill it out, so go fill it out. How they're going to fill it out is like, let's talk lifting. Again, lift less than 10 pounds, and then reaching. I kind of jumped to reaching here. Can barely reach over his head. Standing for 15 to 20 minutes. Walking less than 2 blocks at one time. And so they're wanting to get specific. How much can he lift? How far can he walk? How long can he sit? Sitting no more than 30 minutes at a time. Squatting and bending no more than 30 to 60 minutes total in a day. Not 30 to 60 minutes at a time. Maybe he can only squat for 1 minute at a time, but in a total day, if you were to add up all the times he could squat, it would be 30 minutes. If you don't know, just say, I don't know. Total in a day kneeling, none. No more than 1 flight of stairs. Can only complete 50% of his tasks. Drops items, 1 to 15 times per day due to his hands. So, do your best to fill this out. If you don't know, don't address it or just say, I don't know. If the disabled person is right or left-handed, that information, if you're not sure, is also going to be here on the adult function report that the disabled person filled out. Here, how far can he walk before needing to stop and rest? 2 blocks, and rest for 10 to 15 minutes at a time. How long can the disabled person pay attention? 30 minutes. And the reason they talk about 30 minutes is it's a standard TV show, so a lot of people, a sitcom show back in the day, and so a lot of judges like to use that as an example. Does a disabled person finish what he or she starts? For example, a conversation, chores, reading? Yes, 50% of the time. So if it's no and they never complete it, then go ahead. But make sure if there's any like 10%, 20%, go ahead and hit yes, but give the percentage of the time they actually complete it. How will the disabled person follow written instructions? For example, a recipe. So in Social Security world, they're looking, can this person do simple 1-2 step instructions like pour the water in, boil it, dump the ramen in. Detailed instructions are for more than 3 steps. So that's what they're looking for. How well does the disabled person follow spoken instructions? So here I had the wife write down only 1 instruction at a time or he will not remember, especially if the task takes more than 5 to 10 minutes. So I might say, hey, can you load up the dishwasher and then do and fold the laundry? But by the time he's done loading up the dishwasher, he'll have totally forgotten that I asked him to fold the laundry. So you can give those as examples. How well does the disabled person get along with authority figures? Police, bosses, landlords, or teachers. Here we said good. And earlier we talked about anger outbursts, but that was specifically towards the family. For authority figures, and if you don't know, you can say I don't know. Has he or she ever been fired due to problems getting along with other people? Here we wrote no, but if it's yes, go ahead and explain. Here, how well does this disabled person handle stress? Stress makes them frustrated and angry. And again, I just want to kind of reference, as you can see, not these questions are exactly the same on the adult function report. How well do you handle stress? And of course, that question is for the client. Not well. My pain has made me more irritable. So on the third party form, stress makes him frustrated and angry. How well does he handle stress? Not very well. Have you noticed any unusual behaviors or fears in the disabled person? Yes. My husband is much more irritable and angry. He's afraid he won't even get any better. And here I wrote, I'm afraid this is what the rest of my life will be like. So consistent, not the exact same words. Do you use any of the following? Walker, cane, glasses. And that's on the third party form. Same exact questions. Walker, cane, glasses. Which of these were prescribed by a doctor? All. So if you don't know, you can say, I don't know. Especially when was it prescribed? Glasses, I don't know when they were first prescribed. Walker in March of 2020 and cane in June of 2019. When does the person need to use these aids? And here, and I do want to bring this to your attention, we had the wife say when he goes outside, but on the adult function, when I walk more than 25 feet. So I guess it depends on how big of a house you live in. I don't feel like that's totally inconsistent. I think in my scenario, I was thinking these folks live in a very small house. He doesn't really walk more than 25 feet indoors. So I do think this is consistent. And let's get down to the getting close to the final page here. Does a disabled person currently take any medications or illness? Yes, yes. Name of medications here, and as you can see on the adult function report, it's all sort of the same. And so the third party form, you sign it, you date it, put in your address. Email address is optional, and you can send it in. You can feel free to send it to our office as well. You can scan it or mail it, fax it. I would, again, strongly encourage you to make a copy of it for yourself. That way, if you ever find yourself having to refill this form out due to Social Security losing it or just getting lost in the mail, you're not having to kind of redo this whole thing. And again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and taking the time to kind of go over some instructions. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our firm. We're constantly training our staff on how to help best answer these questions for our clients. But again, before you start, make sure you have this adult function report in front of you, and you can go ahead and get started. So I appreciate it. Appreciate you, and have a great day. Thank you.